Hello and welcome to Run Testers. My name's Nick, and in this video we're going to be comparing the Adidas Boston 12 and the Adidas Adios 8. So the Boston and the Adios are two long-running and very popular lines of shoes within the Adidas lineup. They're both racing shoes originally, but kind of were used as all-rounders, fast trainers, that kind of thing, and they've both received significant updates this year that have improved the shoes quite a lot. They're two great shoes all round, I'll say that, and they're quite reasonably priced given the price of running shoes these days, especially when you look at things like super trainers that are now heading up towards £200. The Adidas Boston is £140 or $160, whereas the Adios 8 is £120 or $130. The Boston is 259 grams or 9.1 ounces in my UK size 9, whereas the Adios is 217 grams or 7.65 ounces. Boston has a 7mm drop and a high stack height of 38mm at the heel and 31 at the forefoot, whereas the Adios has an 8mm drop and a much lower stack height of 28mm at the heel and 20mm at the forefoot. Both shoes have dual density midsoles, and the big update probably to both of them is that the Lightstrike EVA foam used at the back of the Adios and on the underneath in the Boston is now a softer, lighter, better foam than the original version of Lightstrike. With the Adios, you've then got a big chunk of Lightstrike Pro under the forefoot. That's Adidas's best foam, the stuff used in their racing shoes. Then you've got a very stripped back, lightweight upper, a little bit of toe reinforcement, but minimal padding around the heel, not a lot going on at all, and then a continental rubber outsole. As you can see with the Adios, you've got this plastic shank running from around the midfoot with a couple of prongs going a little bit back, but mainly 3 prongs going forward. Now, this is basically the older version that Adidas had in their shoes of things like plates that add a bit of torsion, a bit of stiffness, a bit of propulsion to the shoe, especially for your toe off, but obviously it's not quite as extensive as the system you've got in the Boston. So the Boston has Adidas's glass fiber infused Energy Rods 2.0 running through the shoe. It's got a dual density midsole again with Lightstrike Pro on top and then Lightstrike EVA 2 on the bottom, but you've got a much larger amount of Lightstrike Pro compared to the Adios just because it's got a much higher stack in general. You've still got that very minimal upper though, and there's a little bit of toe reinforcement again, but not much padding around the tongue and collar on the shoe. It's really quite a racy upper for what is a shoe built to do a lot of training miles as well. Then you've got a continental rubber outsole again. You've got a slightly thicker layer probably on the Boston with this ridged setup on the rubber rather than the flatter feel you have on the Adios, but both are really good uppers, durable, provide a lot of grip, not a lot of exposed foam there on either of the shoes. So on the fit of the two shoes, so I've got a UK 9 for both of these, which is my normal size in the UK, but with Adidas that equates to US 9.5, so sometimes they come a bit smaller than other brands that convert to a US 10 when looking at a UK 9. The fit has been fine on length in both of these shoes though, but I haven't loved the fit around the heel on either. I've had to heel lock both of them. Adidas's upper system, the heel padding is just a constant problem for me. I tend to get heel rub if I don't heel lock the shoes and go for quite tight lacing all round. That does deliver a little bit of lace bite, and although that's not really an overall problem with either shoe, I will say they're not the most comfortable uppers. Now, with the Adios, you've got this lightweight racing flat style shoe used for speed runs. It's kind of okay to have a very stripped back upper. Boston though is billed as more of a training shoe that can handle long miles in particular, and it certainly can. It's got a great ride feel for that, so the upper feels a little bit too stripped back and uncomfortable at times for me, just because they do get that lace bite. The heel section isn't that well done, and overall it's just not the most comfortable fit for a shoe I would like doing a lot of miles in. However, overall the fit is fine in both shoes in my normal UK size. As ever with Adidas, they're not the widest shoes in the world, but I will say that these are a bit wider than past versions of the Adios and Boston I've tested, particularly back in the olden days. They were very torpedo-like shoes. So I really loved testing both the Adios and the Boston this year. I think they're both really good updates. This new EVA foam they have in the shoe is noticeably softer, and although people don't like EVA foams in general these days, it's got a good ride feel, especially in combination with the Lightstrike Pro. That gives you that extra bounce and propulsion. I tested the Adios first, and it's certainly a much flatter and more direct shoe than the Boston. It's a shoe I've liked doing short, sharp sessions in particular, short, sharp sessions. It's got a really nice feel off the forefoot there with that Lightstrike Pro, and it's reasonably comfortable at the heel as well. I really enjoy doing a heel rep session in this shoe. It's the kind of thing it's really good for because it's so light and nimble, good grip, nice bounce off the forefoot. Took it down the track as well, felt good for that. And then I also did a steady 5 miler in it, and it felt pretty good for that, and as well as an easy run. And it's not really those kind of runs that it works so well for. Like the steady 5 miler, it's okay, but if I was pushing that out to like a tempo 10 miler or something like that, this is where the Adios doesn't work quite so well, because it isn't the most comfortable shoe in the world, just because it has got that slightly lower platform, that slightly flatter, more direct feel, and that's exactly where really the Boston steps in. The Boston is so good at those kind of runs. It's got a really lovely, smooth and comfortable ride. You've got a nice bit of snap there if you do want to run fast in it. You've got a big wedge under the forefoot of Lightstrike Pro, and even though obviously the Adios has Lightstrike Pro there as well, it feels a lot more comfortable under the forefoot and bouncy, the Boston, just because it's got more foam in there, so it's just generally a much higher stack height in general. So Boston really is a do-it-all shoe for me. Like, I've loved just cruising long runs in it. I've gone down the track in this, and I've done short, sharp reps in it as well, the kind of stuff I do in the Adios, but it feels pretty good in the Boston still. And then you've got that much greater comfort if you are going to use it for easy runs, and in particular it excels for those long, hard runs. So just doing like a tempo 10k or a steady hour during training where you're not running easy, you're not going flat out, but you are going to run quite hard. The shoe is perfect for it because it's comfortable, it's still pretty lightweight, you've got that good grip if you're running on general roads near you, especially in the winter, and you've got a nice bouncy ride that gives you a lot back, especially in combination with the rods here. I don't think you get quite as much propulsion from the Adios. It's much more of a traditional feel, that grounded flat feel of a racing flat, and it's good. You can really feel the work you're putting in, and it's very light and it is nimble, but at the same time you do get a bit more back from the Boston. I think it helps you hold fast paces over longer periods as a result. So two shoes do fit their jobs on paper. Like the Adios is billed much more as the fast shoe, the shoe you'd use for sessions, although some people will like the feel of it. I think as a general trainer, if you do hanker for the days of slightly lower stack, lower profile shoes with a bit more ground feel, slightly firmer feels, this is a really good example of it because it is still pretty comfortable, I'd say. It's just probably the amount of distance in that I'd have the problem with. So if I was just doing runs of up to about 10k of really any type, the Adios does them quite well. It's when you start doing longer runs, crazy little extra comfort you get from the Boston, which for me is the more do-it-all shoe. It can do really every kind of run quite well, and it's still good at that speed stuff that the Adios does, but then you've got a lot more comfort and just generally more enjoyable ride for long runs. The verdict is that these are both really good shoes, and I do think they do the job they set out to do really quite well. Adios is that fast speed day shoe with that traditional ride, that flatter feel, more direct feel, and the Boston is the modern super trainer with those energy rods in the midsole, the dual density midsole, and just the ride that really does work for any kind of run. And so there is a case for looking at either one of them, maybe depending on the distance that you do. Like if you are someone who's specializes in short distance stuff, does a lot of short sessions, even on easy and recovery runs, isn't going out for very long runs, the Adios will kind of tick every box, and it does feel really good for those short track reps, uphill reps, things like that, because it is so nimble, and it is a lot more nimble than the Boston for sure. Boston then really excels if you're someone who's doing longer workouts regularly. If you're marathon training like myself, I'll rarely go out for less than kind of 10, 12k, and the Boston is just better for that because it is a more comfortable shoe while still being speedy, and I do enjoy going and do short reps in this shoe. So that's why I think it's the more versatile all-round shoe and the one I'd go for. And certainly if you're someone in marathon training, you've got long hard runs on your training plan, you've got sessions where you're doing long tempo sections or reps of around like 2k in length, that kind of thing, the Boston just hoovers all of those up really well. It feels great for all of them, and it does a much better job of them than the Adios, which, like I say, is much more geared up to the short stuff, and you've got to really crave that direct feeling that you get with the shoe, which I like from time to time, whereas the Boston I just like pretty much every run. It feels good for every run. Also say if you're looking at them in terms of how they fare on the market at large, I think the Boston does really well. Like, I think it's up there with the very best kind of do-it-all super trainers out there. Things like the Endorphin Speed 3, the Puma DV8 Nitro 2 does a great job of all the same kind of runs, and it's quite cheap for what it is. Like, it's not a cheap shoe, but these days super trainers like start at about 160 quid and go over 200 pounds, and the Boston is less than that, and a shoe that pops up in sales because Adidas still tends to reduce both of these shoes actually. So you see the Boston hovering around the £100 mark, then you've just got a great do-it-all shoe there that really stands out on the market. Adios is a slightly harder shoe to place. Like, there aren't so many shoes like this anymore, like lightweight shoes without full midsoles of super foams and carbon plates. So things like this. There's the Takumi Sen from Adidas itself, which I think is just simply a better shoe than the Adios for the kind of runs I use the Adios for. Takumi Sen's a lot more expensive, but again, it's another shoe that pops up in sales quite a lot. So yeah, the Adios does stand out a little bit. Like, not a lot of brands are releasing shoes like this, and it's a good option for sure if you do like that direct feel. It's good value. Like I say, it can do quite a few different kinds of runs well. It's just you've got to be someone who enjoys the feeling of that flatter, firmer ride that you get with the shoe. So that's not one I pick up myself necessarily, but it's a nice shoe to have around for the odd session. But like I say, if you're someone who sticks to short stuff, does a lot of short, very fast stuff, the Adios will do it well. It's just maybe if you're looking at the kind of runs this shoe does, I think a lot of runners like myself might have a old carbon shoe they probably would use for a similar purpose, and that's just a better, more propulsive ride. But obviously you've got the lower stack here, and that is a style of shoe that some people will really like. But as a general recommendation, I think the Boston is the more accomplished shoe and the one I would get as a fantastic all-rounder. That's a comparison of the Boston 12 and the Adios 8. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.